It's actually two totally separate sound systems that we manually weave them together. So we've got the haptic transducer system, which is the part that physically vibrates your body. And then we have the sound bath.
I like that actually.
Portion, right? And the sound bath portion is actually a ambisonic surround sound. And what ambisonic means is like a regular surround sound system is like a 360 degrees around you, which most people are familiar with what surround sound means. Ambisonic surround sound is the addition of above you and below you dimension as well. So you have the 360 and then you have above and below, which creates a total sphere. And so that's what we have is an ambisonic surround sound. There are 8 satellite speakers going around you, around your body on the platform. There are 4 more above your head. And then there are 2 sub-bass systems, which I'm sitting on one of them right now, that are below you, plus the transducers below you. So it just really creates this close range sphere of sound, this audio flux field that is just aimed right at you, but it's not so loud that it's gonna like hurt your ears, because all of the tactile vibration that your body is getting just satisfies those levels of that you want to feel the bass waves, you know. We don't have to crank the volume to give you that sensation when we use the transducers. And on the Sonosphere, each one of those transducers has 450 watts, and there's 10 of them. So we have 4,500 watts of power, which is a 10 times factor increase of a regular sound bed. And because this thing is made out of metal, plexiglass, and silicone, the sound waves can pass readily into your body, so you don't have a lot of cotton padding that is like absorbing all the best waves of, you know, the sound. You don't get that dampening effect. So I chose silicone for the padding because silicone transmits sound really nicely. It's also squishy, comfortable. You can also warm it up. So yeah, just trying to create like a futuristic, you know, vibratory, lit, warm, you know, environment for a human being that will activate all the good feelings that
we evolutionary, isn't it?
That's what we're going for. Yeah. I've been working on this machine for 20 years. Yeah, since I was 20 years old. And this is my 3rd prototype that I've developed. The first one was really raw and conceptual, kind of an art installation with meditation, space, and sound element. And then the second prototype was commissioned by a man in England for his private residence. So I created a second one.
Wow, what a great thing in a private residence.
Yeah,
oh my goodness.
With upgrades, you know, that was 2008. Shipped that to England. And then this is the third and hopefully final prototype, Sonosphere 3.0. And I will say, like, I didn't invent vibroacoustic therapy. Like, that's been around since the 80s. There are other vibroacoustic therapy devices out there. The Sonosphere just happens to be the most powerful one that's ever been made. And I do have a patent pending for this because the other devices are usually built into like a massage table, and they are like rectangle shaped and usually like stuffed with cotton, you know, like a regular massage table. And they generally have about 4 different transducers, and each transducer is maybe like 50 watts or something. And so there's like a total of like 200, maybe 400 max watts on these sound tables.
Can you talk a little bit about, I know we don't want to get into healing and too much of it, but do people come in for like somebody with a broken limb or somebody with a brain or, you know, some sort of trauma in their head, anxiety? Or...
we do, and I would say the most common ailment that people find the Sonosphere really helps with is fibromyalgia and arthritis. So
Oh, wow.
ligament and joint pain, muscle pain. We've had lots of post-surgery folks come in that have just had surgery on their knee or their shoulder, and we have extra pads and things to like support your limbs. We can also isolate certain areas from too much vibration. Like if you want an area to be more isolated from the vibration, we can put dampening around it. But yeah, just anywhere that you have like pain related to muscles or bones or ligaments.
Well, I'm thinking back of what you said earlier about people aging, people, their knees are more difficult and so on.
Yeah.
Do you have an impact on aging? I'm thinking evolution.
I mean,
I'm going, huh?
Well, my husband and I use the Sonosphere a lot because one of the scientific studies that we've read was done by MIT.
Okay.
And they actually showed in their experiments with 40 hertz that the Sonosphere that 40 hertz vibrotactile stimulation can actually prevent neurodegenerative issues, which we all experience as we get older. And
so that's because it activates all the
nerves. Yeah, and so nerves
that some juice.
Yeah, that are like, if the nerves are dead or they're just sparse, it can cause nerve density to increase. It can bring just more, I don't even know how you describe it scientifically, but it brings more life into the nerves, and just causes more nerves to grow and make connections. And this was proven. And they've also said in that particular experiment that this shows promise for helping with paralyzed, like with people that are paralyzed.
Wow, that's wonderful.
And that just gave me chills when I read that. And I was like, okay, what would happen if they did this experiment with the Sonosphere? Because it is 10 times stronger than what they're using in these lab experiments. Could you actually regenerate and reawaken the nervous system of someone who has had a spinal disconnection or a nerve disconnection to where they're paralyzed? And that really fascinates me the most as far as future applications, but we just don't know if it is possible.
You got to get some volunteers who just want to get in here and try it.
We would, and we'd love to do some clinical studies of our own too, and that's definitely on the slab for the future. Yeah, we're trying to find some grad students at the university level that are doing, biochemical experiments or clinical studies, that involve biophysiology, whatever.
What about memory and things like that? They're
not sure about memory, but I will say the Sonosphere is great if you're having like depression and anxiety. It's been amazing for people processing PTSD, and we've had several folks. Grief processing is a really big one we get in here a lot, and also people recovering from drug and alcohol addiction, because the Sonosphere creates a blissful euphoria that kind of makes you feel like a natural high, except for it's very good for you, and it is something that will help you and actually improve your health. But also makes you feel really good. So that's helpful to some people that are going through that. And then the PTSD folks, I'm also really interested, because we've had a few sessions where like someone with PTSD will bring in their therapist, and then the therapist can do the session with them through the microphone, through the system, the sound system. So then they can talk about talk to their client like they usually would, but it becomes a somatic experience because the words of the therapist are literally coming through the body. So you don't just hear your therapist with your ears, you feel their words in your whole body. And then there's also a music component that then helps you have an emotional release. And
it's a lot different than counseling.
But it's so effective that we've just really been blown away. And some people have, we've got several testimonials from people with PTSD that have said that they feel like they have experienced healing, that they have healed it. And that was, for me, the biggest accomplishment of this entire project, because those are the folks that I really want to help the most.
What about things like autism?
Yes, I'm so glad you asked. Autistic kids and young adults absolutely love the Sonosphere, and a lot of them there's autism is a spectrum, and so you have some folks are very functional in life. Some of them are very, they're not as functional, and they have caregivers, and maybe they can't speak or walk, or, you know,
Or the way
they think is different. Yeah. And some of them have these physical tics where they can't control their body, or they'll be, you know, flailing their arms or moving a lot, or just having, you know, uncontrolled body motions. And a lot of the time their caregivers will be worried, like, oh, they might hurt the Sonosphere, or they might hurt themselves on the Sonosphere, because they feel like maybe this would be overstimulating. But what we've found over and over and over again is that it's not overstimulating. It's actually, that is actually what they crave, and what actually calms them, which makes
soothing.
Yeah, and it doesn't make logical sense, but for some reason that's the effect, because they become calm, they become breathing deeply, stillness, where they're usually always fidgeting or you know, just moving all the time. They'll just become quiet, calm, and it's very effective and very interesting. And they also, a lot of these folks, it's not just the music, it's like the changing colors are very attractive and like interesting, and they're just like, whoa. So yeah, we have a lot of clients, and also mothers of autistic kids love bringing their kids to Sonosphere. Also the deaf community. There's not very many ways for someone who's deaf to hear, to experience sound in any kind of resolution.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go to a concert and you're deaf, you can basically feel the bass waves, right? You can feel anything tactile that's coming from the music, but you're going to be having to stand in front of the bass bins, and you're just going to get blasted by the same boom, 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 you know, at a show or a concert, right? This gives you so many more finer resolutions of sound interactions.
Makes me think of Beethoven. Remember?
Yeah, because he was, but he could feel the vibrations in the keyboard, right, in the old wooden pianos, and so that's kind of what I think this is doing. Is it's like creating more detailed resolution of low sound waves, so that someone that can't hear sound can get a little closer to the feeling of hearing sound, even though it's not hearing it, you're feeling it. So it is. It's.
I was hearing some autistic children apparently have such a strong empathy and intuition that they actually meet out of their bodies in common places.
Interesting.
Yeah,
That wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah,
they wouldn't surprise me. I find that all the autistic people that I know have some extremely rare gift about them.
Yeah.
That other people just can't have or don't have, and sometimes very intuitive, very psychic. Just to say that word is I don't take it lightly, but I like for example, when I was pregnant with my first daughter, I hadn't told anyone yet that I was pregnant, and I visited my friend who has an autistic son. He was about 10 years old, and he came up to me. He didn't even say hi, as sometimes they don't, but he came up to me and he put his hand on my belly and he said, "Baby." And I wasn't even showing it. I mean, I was probably like 6 weeks pregnant, hadn't told anyone, and he knew. He just, "Baby." I could not believe it. I got chills. There's something really special. You know, I think a lot of people think, oh, they're not with it, they don't have the social, you know, awareness, blah blah blah, but they're so aware on these other
things,
that we can't even begin to understand. So my dedication to those kids and those adults is it's a huge part of my passion for this project, and I hope to in the future, you know, create more immersive environments for those folks. And also
it's wonderful, do some amazing research.
Yeah, and just, you know, anytime you make an accommodation for people who are differently abled, you know, it ends up being awesome for everyone in society. For example, you make you know, sidewalks extra wide, you make a ramp option to go into every building. That is awesome for everyone, not just for people with disabilities or differently abled people. It's like it creates a better life for everyone when you consider those folks. So I let them inform my design process a lot. I listen to them the most, because I know that anything I do for them is going to help everyone.
Well, you're fascinating anyway. Well, how did you, let's go back to like who you are and how did all this come through?
Yeah.
Were you born this way?
I was born this way. I've always been weird. I've always been very passionate about art, science, and music. And I went to Fairhaven College, which is in Bellingham, part of Western Washington University, and you make your own degree. It's a design your own degree college. And I chose 3 topics. Usually students choose 2 topics, but I had to choose 3. So within art, science, and music, they make you drill down a little bit more and find a niche in there. So with the art, I did installation art.
Oh.
With the music, I did the healing through music, or the power of the music to transform consciousness or to change feeling, emotion. So I studied that.
Were you already a musician?
I am a musician, yeah. At the time, I sing. I've been in many bands. Play the harp, electric harp. Play a little piano. I'm a songwriter. So yeah, the music is very important to me. And then the last piece, the science, I studied the physics of sound and sound waves. And then at your senior level, they ask you to integrate all of this, and that's essentially what you're getting is an integrative degree. Your degree is actually in your ability to integrate topics, because at Fairhaven they believe that in the future all jobs are going to be integrated jobs, that there will no longer be like single topic jobs, that everyone will need to have like multiple topics under their belt and be able to blend those. And I was really challenged to come up with something for this, and I was really I didn't know for months and months what I was going to make, and I was really freaking out, and the paper that we were supposed to write was due, and I didn't have it, and I was just, I don't know, I was regretting my choice to pick 3 topics, even though it felt like not picking one of those would be like losing a limb. I had to do all 3. I just had to. So out of frustration, I like laid down for a nap, and just for a little bit, and I ended up having this really bizarre liminal dream. And in the dream, it was actually Jack Black, who was like a funny guy in real life. He was just sitting in a simple wooden chair in outer space, just floating in outer space in a wooden chair. And he was like, "Where am I? What's going on?" And then all of a sudden, all these speakers just started flying toward him. And right before it looked like it was gonna run into him, the speaker just stopped. And then another one came and just stopped. And they kept doing that until all these speakers flew in and created a sphere around him. And then it just started to kind of like orbit and gyrate around him. And he was stationary, but the sphere was like moving around him, this sphere of speakers. And so
now were the speakers sort of square looking?
Yeah, they were chunky, like just regular, like Circuit City Sam Goody speakers, just like the cheapest of the cheap. But that was like the literal concept that my higher self like sent me that, and it was like, do you get this? Do you get this? And then I woke up and I was like, oh my gosh, I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna make an art installation that you get inside it, and it has speakers all around you, and somehow you're in a sphere. And I didn't really know how I was gonna get someone to be suspended inside a sphere. So I went and asked.
I'm looking around for a minute to see what it's on.
Right? And this is part of the suspense, is I covered it with this black fabric so you can't see what's under it, because I wanted it to look like it was like floating in outer space.
Yeah. Which it feels like.
Yeah. And then so from there I went and asked my dad, because he's an engineer, and I'd watched him build several houses and boats and stained glass windows, and my dad just knows how to do everything. And at the time he had a satellite dish business. He was building giant satellite dishes. And
is he also musical?
Yeah. Yeah. And he plays violin and has a deep appreciation for music, especially 60s rock and roll. And I asked him, is there any way that you could have a human, stand stationary inside a sphere that's moving? And he said, yeah, you would just need to have a pole in the middle that holds people hold the person up while the sphere part, rotates around that axis, right? So the first two Sonospheres I designed had a pole in the middle, and the motor to this day is still, I still use a satellite dish Turner motor from my dad's original designs. And slowly over time, I showed the Sonosphere to lots of people, and the number one feedback I kept getting was people were like, I really want to be able to lay down in this thing, because the first two Sonospheres you would sit up and you had your back against the pole, and I kind of made these like backrests, and you were supposed to sit, lotus position or cross-legged in there. And a lot of people,
good meditator.
Yeah, good meditator position, but a lot of people just like can't sit crisscross applesauce, especially you get over a certain age, you got your knees hurting, like many people just couldn't do it. Right. And so I was like, and honestly, I started to not be able to do it. Like my legs would go numb after like 20 minutes, and I'm like, yeah, I gotta fix this. So then that was born the idea for this one, 3.0, and for that I also had another dream, which is where the pole got slit. Someone took a sword, and I know this isn't possible in real life, but someone took a sword and like made 4 slices down the pole, and then from the inside it blew up and expanded out, and those 4 slices became the 4 arcs, which then held the circle in the middle, which then allowed me to make the circle much bigger, because then I didn't have to have this clearance for the sphere. It's kind of hard to explain, but anyway, I totally redesigned the structure, and then I also, simultaneously with that, I'd gone back to school again at Western, this time for my degree in physics and engineering.
Oh, physics, good for you.
Yeah, and that was so hard. I mean, I think I couldn't have picked a harder degree. It's insane. So after going through physics, I found out about transducers and just how powerful they can be. And specifically, I started studying immersive experiences like IMAX, and found out that there's these really huge cinema transducers that they use for...
Well, I just want to interrupt you.
Yeah.
For those of us who don't quite understand. I think transducers is a machine that vibrationally...
Yeah, so they're tactile transducers on the Sonosphere. Like they basically are the component of a speaker that is just the coil and the magnet. So it's literally like a piston, and it's causing a mechanical vibration. And they only vibrate between like 5 and 180 hertz. So we're talking really low frequency, under 200 hertz. But then we also, I designed the structure as kind of like you would design a musical instrument. So it's based on a circle instead of a rectangle. Because like you don't ever see rectangle shaped flutes or clarinets, and that's because a curved surface always creates more overtone harmonics. So you can actually get more harmonics beyond just those under 200 hertz, because it is basically an instrument. And then when you get inside it, your body is literally becoming part of a system that's resonating in harmony, and a greater resonance, a greater harmonic feeling overcomes your whole body. Your bone structure, your skeleton all start to resonate in the same stacked harmonies that the Sonosphere is
and we know we're frequency
naturally.
beings. We're just trying to understand.
Yes, yeah, and one of the biggest fallacies that we sort of uncovered also was that, especially in the New Age community, there's a lot of misunderstandings about frequency. And for example, there's a lot of like folks think like, okay, if I listen to 528 hertz or 432 or 111, that this 111 causes this to happen. It's like for all people this frequency does this, and it's like
a tuning machine.
Yeah, but what we found was that there really is no specific frequency that will do the same thing to every single human being, because we're all so different. We have different density distributions throughout our bodies. We weigh different amounts, and when you get onto the Sonosphere, your weight is going to alter the resonant frequency of the whole system.
Okay.
So your weight becomes part of the equation, which shifts the frequency. So there is no universal frequency that does the same thing to every single person. We definitely have identified some ranges of frequencies that are very acute ranges. Like within a few hertz, we can get a person's like lungs to vibrate, for example. We can do certain organ targeting.
But bones,
yep. Some of the bones, especially the spine and low back. Anything in your body that is hollow, any kind of tube, like your stomach, uterus, brain cavity, nasal cavity, throat, larynx. We actually had a client who had an issue with her larynx, and something like when she would get inflammation, it would actually like seize up so where she couldn't really talk. And there's no cure for her condition. It's like a very rare disease that she has. And she came up here to try it when she was having a flare-up to just see if it would work. And it completely worked. It helped her be able to speak again. It made her larynx open up. And because we were able to target just that area and really resonate it for her.
You could target it with this huge...
Yeah. Yep, because the standing waves that are building up in your body, we can move them around by just slightly shifting the frequency and the rate. And the biggest difference, the biggest thing is the relationship of the frequencies with itself, because we have 4 banks up here with these transducers. So there's the opportunity for 4 notes. And so whether those notes are all the same, but just at different octaves, gives one feeling. Or if we put them just several hertz apart, then we end up with this 2 hertz wobble that actually helps do feels totally different inside your body.
Like Tibetan bells that have a slightly different
slightly different resonance. And so you start getting a beat frequency that emerges, right? That's kind of like binaural beats, but it's like a 3-dimensional binaural beats. So it's we've kind of gone through the range, and my husband and I testing on each other, and it's been pretty amazing to see what's been possible with this.
It's kind of a discovery process.
It is. It's super experimental. And when I first started out, I was thinking at the very best this would just be very relaxing. I wasn't thinking for a second that this would be like the cure for anything, or this would be like a deeper medical device or anything. And it was pretty incredible, because when we first turned it on and we tested the resonant frequency of the Sonosphere, like where just naturally without anybody on here, what frequency is going to get like the most resonance, the most peak volume. We found for the Sonosphere, the fundamental frequency is 40 hertz. And we were like, oh, that's kind of an even number. That's kind of interesting. Let's Google that. So we Googled 40 hertz, and lo and behold, all of the science on vibroacoustic therapy that actually has clinical studies behind it, that has been done in laboratories in universities or places where they're getting published clinical studies, they're all using 40 hertz. And I could not have known that or planned that into the fundamental nature of this machine. So that, for me, that was like
highly intuitive. It
was intuitively and almost divinely guided accident that caused us to stumble into this whole realm of science on 40 hertz. So then we started seeking out music for the sound baths that were in the key of E, because that's 40 hertz is E. So we started seeking out music that was in that key, so it would resonate with the Sonosphere and it would feel the best. And we started realizing that chords with the bass note of E, where E is the fundamental frequency, and all of the different chord harmonic intervals of those related to E in the key of E, including E minor, E major, were just the ones that felt the best, just physically felt the best. And it didn't really matter how big you were, because we could just fine tune it for different weighted people. But yeah.
But it isn't. It's not about which person would like E. It's sort of an overall thing.
It's just an overall, like, human beings on the Sonosphere. This is the ultimate, and there is an equation that governs this resonance system. It wouldn't apply to anything else, because nothing else like this has been developed. But there is a constant that is part of the equation, where the variable changing is the weight of the person, and we can find the resonant frequency of the Sonosphere with a certain weighted person. And at first we were like calculating this and weighing people before we got them on, and then eventually we started realizing we just kept getting this really close range over and over again. So we were like, okay, we just need to fine tune it for each person. We don't really need to do the calculation.
What's the name of your company?
Oh yeah, my company.
What's the name of your company then?
Oh yeah, my company is named Vibroacoustix with an X, and the Sonosphere is just the first of a line of devices that I'm going to be creating for, using vibroacoustic therapy. So they're all going to be vibroacoustic devices. This one is going to always be the premier single person experience, the most strongest single person experience. But my next machine, which I've designed, is going to be for 24 people.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, so and it will not have, it's going to be a headphones experience, but it will have the vibration, and it will have the projection ceiling. It'll still be an immersive experience, but it'll be a lot easier to get onto. Someone in a wheelchair can just plop onto there. It'll be a lot more accessible and less less of a liability to, so it might be better in like an urban environment. So we're trying to make something that can be put up in the city and have a higher number of people, and maybe also bring the cost down for an experience.
How wonderful. Well, thank you so much for the time, for the experience, and
So
I look forward to seeing you again. Yeah.